All right, welcome back to Wrestling Retold and Relived with Richie Mars. I, of course, am your humble, gracious host, Richie Mars, and this is the last episode of WrestleMonthia, where each episode was a WrestleMania themed show. And I couldn't have done WrestleMonthia without having this guest right over here. You know him, you love him. He's been a part of some tremendous podcasts in the past, including the Rock versus Cody debate before that was even an argument, the most civil debate on the wrestling internet. He was also on the Undertaker Streak episode, Roman Reigns versus Hulk Hogan's championship run, and many, many more. He is my main man, Mr. Seth-sational. Seth, how are we doing today?
Rich, I'm doing good, man. So if this is the last day of WrestleMonthia, is it safe to say this is the main event?
You could say that this is the main event of WrestleMonthia. This episode's coming out right before WrestleMania, and it's been a heck of a build coming up to it. And one of the featured matches is that tag team match for night one, The Rock and Roman Reigns against Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins. Now, I had you on the show for the Cody versus Rock debate, and you were Team Rock. Now that we have a couple of weeks, couple of months since that passed, what are your overall thoughts on the build so far?
I'm still Team Rock. Still Team Rock. He's the final boss, man. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm not. Dude. How could you say anything wrong with having The Rock on TV? You know, the only thing I wish he was on Raw more. Instead of just Friday nights. But you get him to Rock every week pretty much. And he's ruthless Rock too, which is phenomenal. And it doesn't seem like he's going to be going anywhere anytime soon. So maybe we can extend this a little bit and we don't have to say goodbye to him. Whereas if it was just a match with Roman, we probably would be saying goodbye to him for a little bit, and it would have been more of a one-off. So I'm loving it, and sorry to the people who are upset by this, but I'm glad, man. We're getting The Rock, and phenomenal.
Now, I just wanted to ask you a quick question before
Mhm.
we divulge into our topic here today, and because you're very anti-internet,
Yes.
right, with just like everything involved. So when The Rock posts these promos, basically long form promos that he does on Instagram, that he pretty much translates and cuts and edits for TV, and he says stuff like it's your favorite heel and stuff like that. Very insider terms. What are your thoughts on that as an old school kind of fan?
I don't mind, and so I'm more anti when you talk about anti-internet. I'm more anti-internet when they're breaking character. When we'd have for instance, a couple of years ago, we'd have the Authority out making everybody's life miserable on Monday Night Raw, and then they would post pictures of Triple H and Stephanie hugging children. It to me, keep your character, keep kayfabe. It's just it makes her a better product. The Rock's doing that. He's not a different character on these promos. In fact, he's a more ruthless. It's almost like this is the unedited version, the version that they can't put on TV.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. It's if not for nothing, but we actually learned more about the story from The Rock's videos. We actually got the reason what he told in Cody's ear, and we got the reason, for the anger towards Cody from Rock and Roman. How they look at it from their point of view, how he took their match away, and we really didn't get much of that on TV right
Mm-hmm.
away, you know. But there was a lot more clarification in the Rock videos. Again, I love it, and I can't wait till this week's Rock video to drop. Hopefully tomorrow. Uh, but I'm sure if not tomorrow, there'll be one on Friday, and next week before Monday Night Raw in Brooklyn, I'm sure there'll be one as well. So I'm looking forward to it.
Now let's transition to the build of this biggest WrestleMania tag team match of all time. The Rock and Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins. As the build is concerned, do you agree with the billing that this is the biggest WrestleMania tag team match of all time?
I think it could be. I think you look at the people involved in it, it definitely, I mean, might be. I mean, you look at, just to compare it, and I know we'll probably talk about this match later on, but I mean, if you're going to make an argument for any other tag match being this big, do they have the star power that this match has? You have the tribal chief, the greatest champion of the of the last, what, 4 years.
Mhm.
He's been unbeatable, transcending. He's transcending this whole thing. He's levels above everybody else. He's tag teaming with his cousin for the first time ever, the Rock, who's on the Mount Rushmore. On the other side, you have, Cody, who's arguably, hit his, the greatest prime of his career right now. His popularity is through the roof. I think it's safe to say probably the most popular most popular wrestler right now across the board. And Seth Rollins, who, is a world champion. So, this to me is, just looking at those four alone, match doesn't need anything else. Doesn't need any special referees. It doesn't need any bells and whistles. It to me could be the biggest match. I mean, think of it like this: it's not even the main event of. I mean, if this was a WrestleMania one night affair, this would probably be the opening match leading up to the main event later on, right? I mean, this is, if it's the main event of night one, it's technically the halfway mark of WrestleMania.
Mhm.
So, I mean, you're getting all four of these stars 2 nights in a row. So, Rich, it might be up there as a biggest of all time.
Well, to determine if this is in fact the biggest tag match of all time, we have to go back into history and let's
Sure
go
do.
back to WrestleMania 1,
Let's
where
do
that
it.
main event tag match was Hulk Hogan and Mr. T against the formidable team of Rowdy Piper and
Hmm.
Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff with Cowboy Bob in their corner, Snuka in the corner of Hogan and Mr. T, Miss Pat Patterson as special referee, and Muhammad Ali as the enforcer. Now, this was the first WrestleMania, so
Hmm.
a lot was riding on this event and a lot was advertised around this match. As a fan during this time, how big did this match feel?
Well, I think looking back at it now, it's a little bit bigger. I mean, I understand I was 9 years old when I watched WrestleMania for the first time.
Mhm.
So, to me, I was just like, dude, you got the guy from the A Team, wrestling with the guy from Rocky 3, basically, on one side. And at the time, you know, they were all appearing on MTV,
Mhm.
and looking at it now, you understand why. They were building their brand.
Mhm.
Um, you know, the the mainstream exposure, was huge, in building the brand. I mean, and this is going off on a tangent, but just looking at all the marketing of everything else that came afterwards, between action figures and souvenirs, and the cartoon shows and everything, and the wrestling album. I mean, that all happens because of this, right? We don't have 40 WrestleManias if this match, and this event isn't successful. And I think we could, legit say the rest of the card wasn't, that overly impressive. When you come to memorable matches. I mean, you had Andre the Giant and Big John Studd.
Mhm.
You had the U.S. Express versus Sheik and Volkov. Wendy Richter and Leilani Kai. I mean, as far as star power, all the star power really was, for the most part, in that, was riding on that main event. So yeah, I mean, it is. I think I agree with you in a sense that, if it's not for that match, we don't have 40 WrestleManias. If that bombs, there's no WrestleMania 2. There's no WrestleMania 3. And we're you know maybe talking about a different event today. So definitely, if we're talking about the biggest tag match of all time, that one's up there.
It was very much a trial run to
Yes.
professional wrestling and what WWE is today, with the
Didn't Vince
celebrity
once say?
involvement and their
Yeah.
own stars being mixed into the mix. And
And didn't Vince say once too? I think I remember it was on one of their DVDs
mhm,
where Vince talks about it. Even took out a second mortgage on his home to pay for it. So If this fails, he really had. There's nothing.
Yeah, this was
Yeah.
a very big roll of the dice, and luckily it paid off for WrestleMania. And it's interesting you bring up Vince McMahon because it's kind of like a widely known secret that Vince McMahon wasn't a big fan of tag team wrestling. He said to one of his writers, as you know him, I know him, Mr. Freddie Prince Jr. Shout out Freddie Prince Jr. And when Freddie Prince Jr. pitched a tag match for a show, and Vince looked at him in disgust, and Freddie asked why, and Vince said, "Freddie, I have to pay 4 guys for one match." And then he kind of walked off, and that was his mentality for tag team wrestling at the time. How was the evolution of tag team wrestling, in your opinion, evolved over time, and how important is it to wrestling in general?
It's funny you should say that because when I was researching um, yesterday for the show, looking at some of the matches, and I'm thinking to myself, some of the greatest tag teams in the history of wrestling at some point made their cross into WWF, WWE. Whether they were WWE tag teams like the British Bulldogs or teams that came in here, from other organizations. But how is it that I couldn't find an iconic tag team WrestleMania moment for that many, notable tag teams? Most of the teams most of the matches on the list that we're gonna go through, and we kind of talked about this. Our lists are very similar. There wasn't a WrestleMania moment for the Hart Foundation, like a clear WrestleMania moment.
Mm-hmm.
British Bulldogs, all right, they won the tag team titles, but you know, it wasn't like a career defining moment. You have guys like the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, who throughout the '80s, were the biggest tag team in wrestling, and they did they really have a WrestleMania moment? You know, I'm looking through that some of these matches before. I'm like, holy cow! I'm like, you know, Hulk and Animal were barely on WrestleMania. Um, so yeah, you could you don't have to know the inside secrets to realize that singles matches are definitely where WrestleMania has focused on over the years.
Yeah, and definitely the tag team matches in general are more of the superstar tag teams. And what
Yeah,
I mean by that is just like teams that aren't longevity. Like
thrown
we
together.
yeah, we mentioned like Heart Foundation, British Bulldogs, all those teams, but the only teams that really got notarized in WrestleMania were Hardys, Dudleys, Edge, and Christian.
Yeah,
Whereas other tag team matches on WrestleMania, they were more of, oh, either a celebrity team or maybe it's just 2 guys thrown together, and to the
mhm,
point where we get into the WrestleMania 20 all the way until the mid 30s, early 30s, there were no notable tag team matches. It seemed like.
yeah,
And it was nothing more obvious than when in WrestleMania 25, you had a unification match for the tag team titles between the Colognes and Miz and Morrison, and that was the dark match.
yeah. It was on the pre-show.
Yeah. So it's just really funny to look back on, and where WrestleMania is supposed to be this culmination of all storylines coming in together, coming to one, and then the tag teams weren't really focused on
No.
in a
And didn't
storyline sense.
and I think a couple of years ago, and again, I don't remember which WrestleMania they made an issue. They brought this up and actually made an issue of it. But didn't the Usos at one point say something about how they've been on the roster for 10 years, and they were actually finally making the main WrestleMania show.
Yeah, I
You know,
believe they were on the pre-show for a bit. They were on the pre-show for I think 28 and I think 30, but
yeah.
I
I
think
mean, they're
and
the greatest
31,
tag
yeah.
team. They're the greatest WWE tag team of all time at this point, and it's only recently that they're even getting into the big matches.
I
So
believe 34 was their main WrestleMania debut,
yeah,
which is insane to think about.
right. It's nuts. So
So
yeah, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see that. Tag teams really haven't been the main focus. For years.
And not even like a solid, like good undercard tag team match. You
Right.
give them like 15, 20 minutes. A lot of these matches that we're going to go over, they
Couple
were given a
minutes.
lot of time, but there was a lot of reasons for that. So let's go into the next match. Let's go for Demolition versus Andre the Giant and Haku, which was Andre the Giant's swan song.
Big
Now,
match. See what I did there? Big match, giant.
I'm picking up what you're putting down. It was very clever. I appreciate the humor.
No problem.
Now, as a fan watching this, did you know this was Andre's last hurrah, or did they kind of portray it as this was just another match and Andre may or may not be back?
No, I mean, listen, I had no idea this was going to be Andre's swan song. Um, I mean, at the time, I mean, Andre obviously was not wrestling, all the time,
Mhm.
right? And then, looking back now too, when you watch some of these matches, even these tag matches, you almost like you could see the pain that he's in some of these matches, just moving around, you know, and some of these like in some of the punches that he's throwing don't even come, or the chops don't even come close to the target. So you could, looking at it, he's getting older, and he's probably very uncomfortable in there.
Mhm.
But no, I mean, going into this, I wasn't saying to myself, "Oh, this is going to be Andre's last match." Instead, I focus more on holy cow, Andre just left the Heenan family.
Mhm.
After that match, Bobby Heenan smacked him. He's in. What was he thinking? And
Yeah.
then Andre took a shot at Bobby and totally missed, but Bobby went flying.
Yeah.
So must have been the reverberation effect on that one. Um, then Andre rides up the cart by himself, and the next time you see him, he's basically just an appearance. Every time he comes on after that, and he wasn't wrestling anymore. And again, I'd have to check this, but it wasn't that long after that where you'd see him on TV and he was on crutches.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is definitely on the list because it's definitely the last appearance we have in the ring of Andre the Giant at WrestleMania.
Now we do that. Now we'll fast forward to WrestleMania 9, which is Money Inc. versus Hulk Hogan and Brutus Beefcake. Now, Mr. Seth, I don't claim to know everything.
Hmm.
What was the story between the Hogan and Beefcake tag team other than, them being lifelong friends?
So this basically, Hogan had been gone,
Mhm.
and if you remember, Brutus Beefcake had not been wrestling because he had that parasailing accident.
Right, yes.
And there was, an incident on Monday Night Raw, Money Inc. at the time were the tag team champions, and Brutus Beefcake was in danger and he needed a partner, and there was only one person he could trust, and it was Hulk Hogan, and that's how you get the Money Inc. versus were they the Mega Maniacs? I want to say
I,
they were the Mega
I think
Maniacs.
so, yeah.
It might have been the Mega Maniacs, but you know this is more of a one-off for Brutus Beefcake because he wasn't a regular in-ring performer at the time.
Hmm.
Um, you know, and this got a little confusing because you're sitting there thinking, I know at least I was at the time, you know, of everyone that could be Hogan's partner versus Money Inc. Brutus, and again, nothing, Brutus, and nothing against Brutus because listen, growing up before that injury, Brutus, those years that he was on his own after the Dream Team, after he went off on his own and became Brutus the Barber, he was legit one of the biggest stars.
Hmm.
That parasailing accident killed his career as far as
Hmm.
WWE. He was never the same afterwards.
Well, he'll
But
still have a wonderful career as Zodiac and the Booty Man, you know?
in WCW, where they gave him a new name every couple of months, it seemed. You know, um, but as far as WWE, his career pretty much was never the same.
Hmm.
Um, and I just remember saying, I'm like, all right, so you want to put Hogan in, obviously they're doing some kind of, they want Hogan on this card. But of all the people, like Hogan and like they couldn't find someone who was already, actively wrestling, you
Hmm.
know. I mean, I guess, you know, Hogan and Beefcake, I mean, before that, they really never, they really were not really a team when
Hmm.
the Brutus the Barber was having his singles run.
Yeah.
So I mean, this really was the first time they were teaming up. They never really made much note, much of their real life connection because back then they didn't do stuff like that.
Right.
Um, so listen, I mean, on one end you got Hogan and Brutus the Barber on a team that you never
Mhm.
got before. But on the other hand, yeah, you looking back at it now, you're like, one, you couldn't have got, couldn't have, there was no other stars you could have thrown in there. I mean, but for for what it was, I mean, and where it was on the card, and you know, I think it got the job done.
Mhm. And then, of course, Hulk Hogan cashes in his brother in the bank and cashed
Yes,
in on Yokozuna later that night.
like
But yeah, Hogan being in here, it's very funny that he was almost in the Mr. T position
yeah,
than he when he was in WrestleMania 1. So it's almost like a
he
little
was
bit
the
of a
celebrity,
theme coming on here. Yeah.
and it was almost like you wonder, again, Hogan had not really been there. He was doing his Hollywood thing, which seems to be the rite of passage for a lot of these guys, right? They become big stars in the wrestling ring, and then they end up they have their Hollywood turn, and they become part timers. And for Hogan, this was, I guess, you want to say his time away from the ring. I wouldn't say part timer for him because
Hmm.
he just took time off and was gone, and you know, and for him when he came back full time, he was not, he was kind of with the competition at
Yeah.
that point, you know. And when he was there, he was there full time. So, but anyway, getting back to this, I mean, it's almost like you wonder, like, hey, Hulk, ring ring, it's Vince. We got to sell out Caesar's Palace, and kind of need you for WrestleMania. What could you
Hmm.
do? Like you got to wonder, like, what was that conversation, and how did they go from the tag match to Hogan walking out with the title?
Well, brother, I just wanted the title, brother. Just go boost up business, brother.
I mean, Bret Hart kind of gave up that opportunity pretty quickly,
Yeah.
right? He's
Yeah.
like, "No, Hulk,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
go in
Oh,
there.
yeah.
This is he's challenging you. You go in there.
I
Don't
wanna
back down."
I want to be a fly in the room with that conversation with Vince and Hulk. All right, Hulk, we want you to be a part of the tag team title match. That sounds good, dude. But what if I win the title that night too? You mean
Well, what
tag
about
title?
Bret Hart?
Yeah.
What about Bret Hart? What about him?
It's all right, brother. He'll bounce back, brother. I know, Brett. This will make him a bigger star than ever before, brother.
We'll tease a Hogan and Bret Hart match that will never happen.
Yeah. Oh, that's a whole nother podcast.
Yes.
But let's go with the WrestleMania 11. This is kind of like the inverse of the Andre Haku tag team because this is a tag team actually forming at the event with Owen Hart introducing his new partner of Yokozuna against the
Mhm.
Smoking Guns. Now, with Owen Hart, this storyline, him saying, I have a partner, and just kind of hyping up that story. Did you think that story belongs on a WrestleMania where one of the partners is a mystery?
I don't mind that. I mean, it
Mhm.
gives a little mystery, a little, I got to watch,
Mhm.
right? Or you need a reason to tune in. Um,
Mhm.
although how many times over the years would there be a mystery partner, and you'd leave disappointed by the
Yeah.
mystery partner, like, oh my god, the gobbledygooker, like there'd be some kind of mystery surprise. You're hoping it's somebody else,
Our
and
partner's gonna shock the world.
yes, and it ends up. But for this one, I like the pairing, of Owen and Yokozuna. You got, you had Jim Cornette involved. You
Mhm.
had Mr. Fuji involved. They gave you know gave stuff for Owen and Yokozuna to do. I mean, Owen needed something other than his feud with Brett at the time. They've been
Right.
feuding for a year. You know, for whatever it is. I mean, it seems like Yokozuna's singles days were done at this point because he really was just in the tag.
Mhm.
Of course, looking at some of the documentaries that are on TV now, you kind of understand the reason why.
Yeah.
But I
Just
love,
like
they're one of my favorite teams. And we talk about WrestleMania before with guys being thrown together. Well, for two guys that were thrown together, you know, and Owen seemed to make a habit out of making successful pairings with partners he was thrown with.
mhm.
But you know, this might have been one of my favorite tag teams of all time, Owen and Yokozuna.
I always liked the little man, big man
Yeah,
tag team. Even though Owen Hart, I think he was like 6'1", but he was little at the time when it
he's little
concerns like
compared to Yoko.
WWE.
Listen, everyone's little compared to Yokozuna. So
Yeah, but I always like the tag teams that will get there. Like you had Haku Andre, you
mhm.
had Yoko and Owen. We also had Miz and Big Show, but we don't really talk about that one.
Right.
We don't talk about Show Miz. We talk about Jericho though, but they weren't on
Yes.
WrestleMania. But
No.
we're gonna fast forward to a very interesting match, Mr. Seth. It is the dumpster match, the New Age Outlaws against Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie. I'll give you 3 guesses who came up with the Chainsaw Charlie name.
Well, it wasn't me.
Mhm.
I was so confused. I'm like, why are they not calling him Terry Funk? The commentators are calling him Terry Funk. Jim Ross is calling him Terry Funk. Why are they announcing him as Chainsaw Charlie? It made no sense why it couldn't just be Cactus Jack and Terry Funk. Everyone knew it was Terry Funk. He'd been there before. I think he has a WrestleMania match at WrestleMania 2 with his brother tagging, as the Funk Brothers. Why they had to insist on calling him Chainsaw Charlie, again, I throw my hands in the air. But I
What
guess
if I
Vince,
told you the man himself wanted to call himself Chainsaw Charlie?
really? See,
Yeah.
and here I am figuring you were going to throw more shade at Papa Vince on this one.
No, this was a Terry Funk call, as told by Mick Foley in his autobiography, that Terry Funk wanted to be called Chainsaw Charlie, and he wanted to do the pantyhose thing with the chainsaw.
Okay. One too many chair shots in ECW, maybe, scrambled his head a little bit. Listen, to me, I found it odd that the commentators were still calling him Terry Funk,
Mhm.
and the ring announcer was announcing him as Chainsaw Charlie. But hey, listen, we all want to create an alternate personality at some point, right?
I guess, but speaking of personalities in this match right here, the dumpster match, which is basically you have to put both your opponents in a dumpster to claim
Close it.
the tag team championship, and you had to close it.
You got to close it.
Very much like today's ambulance match when we still have
Correct.
them every once in a while, or casket match, or whatever
Or
match that
right.
you do to like put your opponents
They
through
got to be right.
whatever.
It's got to be closed. It's got to be
Got to be
closed.
close. How did you like the build to this match? Because the build up to this match was the New Age Outlaws, who were newly formed around this
Mm-hmm.
time. They were opponents first, and then they realized, we're better as a tag team, and that's where the Rockabilly hit Honky Tonk Man with a
Yes.
guitar.
And they're
And
both
then,
coming off really poor gimmicks too, if you think about it. Entering the
ooh, yes.
Attitude Era.
Mhm.
Rockabilly and the Road Dog Jesse James.
The real Double J.
Yes. I mean, I think for both those guys, those gimmicks, were not working. The New Age Outlaws was a high, was the launching pad for both of their careers.
Mhm.
I mean, no, when you talk about Billy Gunn, people don't really refer to the Smoking Guns as much as they refer to DX, the New Age Outlaws, and Mr. Ash years.
Mhm.
So, and same thing for Road Dogg. People don't really talk about his years with Double J as the roadie. So I think we know these guys from this incarnation in this time period.
Mhm.
I think it was a big match for them. You know, um, you got you know, I love the ending of it too.
Mhm.
Where they close it with the what was the thingy they
The
used
lid.
the
The
yeah,
lid.
but didn't they use a like a some kind of like a truck or something to like keep it shut?
They used some
Yeah,
contraption, which was
yeah.
poetic justice because the New Age Outlaws rolled
Had
them
done
off the Raw stage.
right, exactly. So I mean, I love the match. I thought the build was good. Um, I thought the match itself it served its purpose. It was entertaining. Um, you know, and again, it was Attitude Era. So
Mhm.
do what you can.
Do you like the wrong dumpster rule?
I forgot about that. I did forget about that one. So clearly, the wrong dumpster rule wasn't in my head. I did forget about that one though. I forgot they were not in the official dumpster.
Only in wrestling, right?
Only in wrestling could you have a dumpster match where you find out afterwards they were not in the official dumpster. Yes.
And would you say up to
I,
this
I wouldn't
point,
want,
this
I was to say, I wouldn't want to be in any dumpster. So let's just throw that out there too.
and would you say up to this point, this was probably the most built world tag team title match to this point?
I don't know if I'd say most built. I mean, but I'd say most built in a while.
Okay.
Because those first couple of years, I mean, the story with the British Bulldogs, and the Dream Team was a pretty big build.
Hmm.
That was a feud that had gone on for months.
Right.
The Hart Foundation, and the Bulldogs, although they didn't have a 1-on-1, it was a 6-man. You know, that was a pretty big build as well. But I mean, early on in the U.S. Express, they really, and I mean, I wouldn't say them and Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik had a big, huge build, but at the same time, the gimmicks kind of bounce off each other.
Right.
U.S. Express, Sheik, and Volkov. But other than that, I mean, after the first handful of WrestleManias, no, this definitely was the biggest storyline build for a tag team championship in a long time.
And speaking of one of the most chaotic tag team championship matches, we're going to go into even more chaos because we have the
What?
triangle ladder match and we have the tables, ladders, and chairs match
Oh my!
back to back years. Edge and
So we're
Christian,
going.
the Dudleys, and the Hardys.
So we're going straight from, bringing in Cactus Jack and Terry Funk from ECW, to make the tag team scene a little extreme. So now we got the Dudleys, Edge and Christian, and the Hardys, turning it up a notch 2 years in a
Mm-hmm.
row.
Yeah.
Great.
And also pretty much the same exact scenario because the
Yeah.
Dudleys come in as the champions for both years,
Mm-hmm.
and Edge and Christian both win those
Both
those
years.
said matches as well. Now, I'm familiar with the build of WrestleMania 2000 because at No Way Out, the Hardys versus Edge and Christian, number one contenders match for the tag team titles. Hardys get turned on by Terry, and then
Yes.
Terry tries to offer her services to Edge and Christian, which, fun fact, it was supposed to be the split between Edge and Christian at that point that they pitched. But Edge and Christian turned that down, and that's
Yes.
why we got this triple threat tag team triangle ladder
Yes.
match because the No Mercy one in 99 was such a huge success. Why don't we add another team involved?
Yeah.
So,
And I gotta say too, I mean, just thinking on, outside the box from what I was talking about before,
mhm,
you know, um, how tag teams really didn't really have their WrestleMania. Like think of like the Road Warriors again, Legion of Doom, not really having their moments. I think it's safe to say that Dudleys are probably really the only tag team that ever came in from outside that really succeeded and had so many marquee matchups. And 2 years in a you had these two back-to-back matches, and they're legendary matches.
mhm,
And Dudley's went on to multiple tag team championships, and they're in the Hall of Fame. And you know this was a team that started out in ECW, and they weren't even you know and again, it's from what I remember, and I could be wrong on this, but you know, weren't the Dudleys originally just everybody almost seemed to be a Dudley too at some point? There was, there were so many siblings in the Dudleys, and you know, but they came in, they kept their credibility, they kept their gimmick, and here they are bringing Edge and Christian and the Hardys along to legendary status with them, and the three teams totally built off each other. And you don't have this match if you don't have Edge and Christian, or you don't have the Hardys, or you don't have the Dudleys. I mean, you
mhm.
can't put anyone else in that match either time.
And let's talk about the build of this match specifically,
Hmm.
because going back and watching the build, WrestleMania 2000, very simple build.
Yes.
Edge and Christian felt they were being outshined by the Hardys. Hardys were the new team on the block that's being very popular, and the Dudleys, freshly off of ECW, they went from tie dye to camo, and now
Yes.
their integration to WWE is complete there. And you had a
Yes.
bunch of different moments. I think the ones that stand out are the swanton through Bubba through the table on the floor, and also that brutal bump of, that ladder bridge with the table, Matt trying to grab the championships, and then that push off the mat, giving Edge and Christian their first tag team championship reign. Now, as it pertains to all these guys, because all these guys crushed their debut match, and then you
Mhm.
go the following year, and the build was, for lack of a better term, haphazardly thrown together. You had Edge and Christian costing the Dudleys the titles against the Hardys, and then the Hardys lose to Edge and Christian, and then Edge and Christian lose immediately after that to the Dudleys, and then we get TLC 2. Did you feel like this is kind of like peak Attitude Era where it's like they were just kind of writing matches just to kind of throw them on the card?
Yeah, but and I think in the Attitude Era we were used to that though.
Right, yeah.
It was we didn't really analyze it and be like, oh, they're doing it again. I mean, it was
Hmm.
just that's what they did. That's the style that they had back then. Like what match can we make? That will have the biggest impact on the WrestleMania card. Even
Hmm.
well, let's these are the three teams. Let's put them together. And let's what they had TLC. Let's do TLC too. Let's do it up. Let's throw in some tables, ladders, and chairs, and let's see what they can do with this. And they hit a home run multiple times.
And
You
I'm
know.
going to share some behind the scenes facts with you, Mr. Seth, with this TLC 2 in particular,
Hmm.
because there was an argument on what the finish should be. Now, how the finish was, it was Edge hit that super spear,
I remember that. Yes.
and then Bubba and Matt would be fighting on the top, and then Rhino would come, push the ladder, and then Matt and Bubba would go through all four tables. Now, there was an argument, and it was split down the middle on what the finish would be. Either the table bump goes last, or that super spear goes last. Now, I'm going to put you as producer Seth. What spot would you have finish off the match?
I wouldn't change it. To me, I thought the match was great the way it ended.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean, if you're asking me if I'm going to second guess, I'm not going to second guess because I love the match the way it is.
Right.
However, if it were to get changed, the other idea wasn't a bad idea either,
Hmm.
you know. But the way it ended was so good. I mean,
Yeah, I'm
you
more
know,
inclined of like the ending that they used, just
yeah,
because it's the more heel ending. Because you
that's
have
what I'm
the,
saying.
you have the
Like,
Rhino just screwing out the Dudleys and Matt out of the championships, and which leads Edge and Christian to win. And did you think Edge and Christian winning all of the TLC matches at this point kind of hurt the other teams, or did you think it just kind of made these guys stronger as a result?
I mean, in that time period, Edge and Christian were one of the best. They literally were one of the top tag teams.
Hmm.
So I don't think I was surprised that they were winning. You
Hmm.
know, again, I'm not. I was more surprised to find out that the Dudleys, really didn't win these matches. With all the right. No, think about it. I mean, they
Yeah.
they had you know all those tag team championship, 20 something championship reigns. With everything combined.
Right. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and yet they never won the TLC match. Like
Hmm.
I didn't even until I thought about that afterwards. I'm like, holy cow! I never realized that. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm not surprised Edge and Christian would win. I mean, those are two Hall of Fame guys right there. Well, one of them's a Hall of Famer at the moment. The other one will be one day, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Or at
I'm
least the
fully
tag team.
confident.
Yeah, or at least the tag team of them should be in the Hall of Fame.
Hmm.
I mean, they were probably they would be one of the greatest teams of the Attitude Era by far. You
One's a
know,
heck of a father too.
yeah.
and
And the other one, put everything aside to go have fun with his friend. You
how,
know,
how can we hate that, Mr. Seth?
no, right? He's sitting on the side right now, watching everybody else get ready for the biggest WrestleMania of all time, but he's having fun with his friends. So, and he's doing that for his kids because
Hmm.
his girls wanted him to go have fun.
Hmm.
So, how could you fault that?
Yeah. Now let's fast forward to a
Good
different kind
idea.
of tag match,
Good
a
idea.
handicap tag team match, as we
Oh,
have
okay. Are we allowed to say
Evolution,
that?
a
Are we allowed to
handicap
say that?
tag match.
Yes, we're allowed to say that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
3-on-2 handicap match.
Thank you. All right.
All
Yes.
right. Evolution, Randy Orton, Ric Flair, and Batista versus The
Hmm.
Rock and Sock Connection. Now,
big one.
this was
Yes.
my first WrestleMania watching as a fan. Fun
Really?
fact. Yes, WrestleMania 20.
WrestleMania 20 was your first.
It was the first one. Yes, it was.
Okay.
And this is like, I've heard stories about, oh, The Rock, The Rock, The Rock. And this was
Mhm.
The Rock during a very awkward phase. He was
Yes.
leaned out, the goatee, still had the hair. It
Yeah.
was a
This
very, very
the
awkward
current
period.
Rock looks like he ate this Rock for lunch. Correct.
Yeah. And this was also the first WrestleMania for both Randy Orton and for Batista.
Hmm.
And during this feud, it was primarily a Mick Foley versus Randy Orton feud that started.
Correct.
And then these guys were kind of just the add-ons, which is weird to say that The Rock is an add-on, because more things change, more they stay the same when we get to a current tag
So,
team match. But,
so here's I was gonna say
well,
I was gonna jump in and say, for all we list all the great tag teams,
mhm,
and we even talk about how guys are thrown together and
mhm,
become tag teams, but The Rock and Sock, in the years before WrestleMania 20,
mhm,
during those prime Attitude Era years, The Rock and Sock were a pretty big deal when it came to tag teams.
mhm,
Even in between The Rock's singles championships and Mick Foley's championships, these guys were winning tag team championships, for two guys that were clearly thrown together at the time, and it helped The Rock into a popular, go from being a heel to a most popular guy at the time.
mhm.
Um, I love the Rock and Sock connection. I mean, their promos are better than their matches.
Right, yeah,
Their
yeah.
promos are legendary. And when this match is getting built, and Mick Foley is getting attacked by Evolution all the time, and he says, "You're right, I got a partner," and it's The Rock. You're like,
Mhm.
it's The Rock, The Rock,
Right.
and when The Rock first comes out there too, and lays, as The Rock would say, layeth the smack down, lay the smack down on their candy asses, on Monday Night Raw, right before, as the final build to this match. Like, dude, we're getting The Rock. Kind of like now, we're
Mhm,
getting The Rock. And this is only after he'd been gone for a little while.
mhm,
This is WrestleMania 20. I mean, he was at, WrestleMania, 19. So
mhm,
it's not like he was gone for that long. But yeah, he was leaned out, and what I thought was weird about this match was just the ending. You know,
mhm,
Usually you assume The Rock's coming in to help Mick Foley avenge his you know his beatings, and they know. I was more shocked with this, the way this match ended, but that was then. Now you look at it,
mhm.
you're like, all right, well, yeah, no, they built, you know, two future world champions with this match too. So, and I'm sure that was part of Foley's Foley's intent as well.
Mm.
So,
Did you think it was odd that it was a handicap match and not just a 6-on-6 or a 3-on-3 rather?
well, who would you have put? So, who would you have put with Rock and Sock?
I'm just saying in general because usually with the baby faces, you want to even the
Yes,
odds. You know what I mean?
correct, correct. I mean, listen, they were at a disadvantage, but again, like who would have gone in there with them? I mean, I think it's a legit question.
Mhm,
You know, Evolution. I mean, that people have said, well, Evolution had Ric Flair,
mhm.
and he's not a full time wrestler, but he kind of was. I mean, he started out not as a full time, but
Yeah.
really at the height of Evolution, Ric Flair was wrestling every week on TV. You know,
Right.
so I don't even want to say, well, they had Ric Flair. Ric
Yeah.
Flair, dirtiest player of all time.
Yeah.
16-time world champion. Yeah. They have Ric Flair. They have Dave Batista, and they have Randy Orton
Mm,
against Mick Foley, who's coming out of retirement,
mhm.
and hasn't shown that he, shown much against them, and The Rock, who hasn't wrestled in a while. So yeah, they were at a clear disadvantage.
It's
Who'd
crazy to
you
think
put?
that we have two legitimate Hollywood stars in that tag team match in that
Yeah, think
like
about
point in
that.
time. Yeah.
I mean, would you have thought at the time that Dave Batista and The Rock? I mean, there are probably some people going through YouTube right now who never really knew them as wrestlers, who are like, "Oh my God, look at this!"
Right.
You know, that's the guy from that's Batista as a wrestler. That's The Rock. I'm sure there's some youngins who are seeing that for the first time.
Yeah. And
Cool.
now we go on to the mixed tag team portion. of this segment, and we had two back-to-back WrestleManias with mixed tag team matches. We had John Cena and Nikki Bella against The Miz and Maryse, and then we have WrestleMania 34, Triple H and Stephanie McMahon against Kurt Angle and Ronda Rousey. Talk about two dramatically different builds for this tag team matches right here. Now, how did you like the mixed tag team dynamic as a WrestleMania build?
I don't mind it. I don't mind the mixed tag team match. But I think comparing those two matches are you can't really compare the two. I mean, you have one match which was built pretty much. I almost felt so it could be an episode of Total Divas. You know, I mean, literally, I felt like that the whole John Cena Nikki Bella that whole match was really put together almost just so they can take footage from Total Divas, involve it in a match, and then the end of that match with the whole proposal thing was like, oh man, really, you know, like they do. Are we really getting this done so they can air it out on Total Divas? And that was that. And then on the other end, you got Triple H and Stephanie and Kurt Angle and Ronda Rousey. I mean, two totally different matches. One's a main event and one's Total Divas. So,
And a fun fact is Ronda Rousey's original partner wasn't going to be Kurt Angle. It was going to be Braun Strowman
yes. Mm-hmm.
because of
I do
that
remember.
tease they did in Survivor Series between Braun and Triple H
Yes, I do
a
remember
couple
that.
months prior. But again, Ronda Rousey has been in the news recently with her book tour right now for her second autobiography. And she doesn't speak very highly on the backstage environment and such like that. But this match really did start her career off in WWE very strong because you're with
Mhm.
the top stars in the industry right off the bat. Do you think WWE missed the boat on Ronda Rousey to a certain extent?
I think they gave her every opportunity. I mean, she was multi-time women's champion. You know, in her final, she had the tag team championship with Shayna before
Mhm.
she left.
Just in like a
I mean,
creative sense.
yeah, I mean, and I'll be honest. I mean, I'm sure there's stuff that went on behind the scenes that we are not privy to, and we
Correct.
will never be privy to. You know, the world of Twitter is not privy to it either. X, whatever you want to call it. I'm sure at some point we will see Ronda Rousey back.
Hmm.
Even if it's for the Hall of Fame, you will see Ronda Rousey there again. For whatever reason, clearly she left, you know, um, on a sour note. Whether that was her, whether it was them, whether it was a combination, we don't really know. You know, um, there's always three versions: her version, their version, and the truth somewhere in the middle. Who knows if how much of what is being said right now is to get people who get interest in the book.
Hmm.
We don't know that. We won't know, until down the road, or until or we may never know. But I will say at this point, I thought it was a great build. They were building Ronda up as this, as unbeatable at this point. I mean, the only other time, before Ronda had made her debut with that year's Royal Rumble, the only other time we had seen her was at WrestleMania 31 when she
Correct.
uh,
Yeah.
she was at ringside, with the rest of the four horsewomen, and The Rock brought her in, during that little segment between Triple H and Stephanie, The Rock, and Ronda Rousey, you know, and that was really our first scenes with Ronda, and we're like, ooh, she, maybe one day she will be here, and then she did show up, and
Mm.
they did that. Listen, it wasn't till way after that match when you know whether it was internet criticism started getting to her and for whatever, or just not being, and again, I don't know, I wasn't there, I'm not there, I've never spoken to Ronda Rousey, you
Sure.
know and I will in a couple of weeks at a meet and greet, but I've never met her, and so I hate insinuating things that you read online, but as a fan, that first run was great, and she was
Hmm.
she
I
was like
agree.
unbeatable. I mean, she was taking down five security guys, at once. She was, she threw around Triple H in that match.
Yeah.
Triple H is a 250-pound guy. She's throwing
Mhm.
him around like he's a rag doll. She put Stephanie in a cast after that match. Um, she went on to win the women's world championship after that match. The following year, she main evented WrestleMania. When it was still one night with
Right.
with Becky and Charlotte, and you can make the argument that that match is not the main event if Ronda's not
Mhm.
out in it.
And
So
Ronda
I
was a
can't
really big
say that.
celebrity at this time too.
Yeah. So I mean, you can't say, I can't sit there and say that they dropped the ball with Ronda. You know,
Mhm.
if anything, maybe and again, I don't know this, but maybe just when she made her second when she made her second run with them, maybe just the interest on either side wasn't what it once was.
Yeah.
Who knows? Again, we may never know. But I
Right.
think as far as WrestleMania tag matches, I think that match was huge.
And speaking of celebrity tag team matches, we got a couple on our docket right now. We got Damian Priest and Bad Bunny against Miz and Morrison. And then we had in WrestleMania 38, we had Rey Mysterio and Dominic Mysterio against The Miz and Logan Paul. It seems to be like a running theme that The Miz is a part of these tag team matches,
Yeah.
these high profile tag team matches. Very good utility player. Do you think that's the best role that Miz is suited in?
Apparently, apparently Miz is the guy that they put the celebrities with. Fun fact: up until this, that first match with, I had no idea who Bad Bunny even was.
Mhm.
Like what is a Bad Bunny? I had no idea who Bad Bunny was. And I think, right, we could all agree Bad Bunny at that point, WrestleMania 37, impressed a lot, because up until that point, the celebrities never were that good in the ring. I
Mhm.
mean, you would, if you didn't know better, you would think Bad Bunny was was a luchador, in his past life, and was an experienced wrestler.
Right.
And then the following year, Logan Paul, same thing. Again, not your typical celebrity. He's a guy who just you know picked it up for the first time in that match and looked phenomenal. You know,
Mhm.
so
A
but that
weird thing.
yes, I was going
Yeah.
to just say,
Yeah.
I don't want you to think I'm a Logan Paul guy though, because again,
I won't. I
I
won't
can.
spread that around, Seth. I won't
No, and
spread it around.
listen. I mean, if we're changing WrestleMania and taking people on and off the card, I'm not gonna lie to you. I probably would take Logan Paul off the card every year.
Yeah.
So,
How do you feel about that Prime sponsorship in the middle of the ring at WrestleMania?
hey, listen, man. I mean, you got to get your money from somewhere, right?
Gotta get paid.
Last year we had the dance. We had the Prime water. The Prime bottle was down there with him, so
Yeah.
I ended up going through a table.
Yeah. So what was weird about the Bad Bunny build, because they were building it with the Royal Rumble, and then
Yeah.
the Miz cashed in, became WWE champion. Then he dropped at the Lashley, and
Hmm.
then he's in this celebrity tag match, which is a pretty cool consolation. But when you're WWE champion and then you just kind of drop it, and then you get beat by Bad Bunny, I don't know. It
Yes.
was just like a very strange time in WWE.
Yeah. Listen. It's almost like, all right, we need somewhere for the Miz to be. I thought the whole thing, that the way the Miz ended up with the Money in the Bank that year was a little strange to begin with. I mean, let's not forget Otis had the Money in the Bank.
It's
You
called
know,
buyer's remorse, Seth.
yeah. you know, I think we forget that Otis was the Money in the Bank winner,
Kept it
and
in a lunchbox too.
kept it in a lunchbox. And for some reason, they decided to take the Money in the Bank off of Otis, and and let the Miz, get it. And I mean, that could be the first time that's ever actually happened,
I
right?
think Edge and Kennedy did it.
Yes, I was gonna say Mr. Kennedy was the only other one.
Yeah.
But all right, so a little buyer's remorse, I understand, but like, not for nothing. Um, it was just very. It was almost like it was. Now, granted, this is coming out of COVID.
Hmm.
This is Thunderdome era.
Right.
I understand. You know, things were a little thrown together because guys could wrestle, guys couldn't wrestle, and you know you had a lot of issues going on there. But yeah, the whole Miz winning the world championship, dropping the world championship happened very quickly. It's almost like we need a transitional champion to get the title from Drew to to Bobby. without Drew having to lose to Bobby. So we'd rather have Drew lose to the Miz. Like, that was just odd. It was strange. But hey, listen, it is what it is. Who am I to criticize because I watch it and I love it. So, um, but yeah, no, So what do you do with the Miz? You put him in this match. Listen, it's a high profile match. I mean, let's be honest.
Mhm.
I may not have known who Bad Bunny was at the time, but millions of people are streaming his music. So, you know, and the Miz is that, if you need a face of WWE, it seems that it's always the Miz in these matches. So, yeah, I guess the Miz is the right guy.
So we'll go after the Logan Paul match. We have WrestleMania 39 with the first tag team championship main event in WrestleMania history. We have the Usos against Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Now,
Yes.
this was built for a while with Sami Zayn and the Bloodline saga, which was probably the most popular storyline at this time. Did you think the tag team championship match was the right way to go instead of Sami Zayn facing Roman at Mania?
So we've had this conversation.
We have, yes.
We have. I mean, you know, are you going to say you would have rather have had Sammy versus Roman instead of Cody versus Roman? I mean, I understand from the story with Sammy and the Bloodline, it was a much bigger story. You know, it went
Mhm,
on for pretty much almost a year. So it was a much bigger story involved in Cody at the time. So I
mhm.
see where that argument comes in, but I mean, the Cody comeback, I mean, I think at
I
the
don't.
end of the day, listen, I think at the end of the day, you know, Roman either way is walking out with the championship,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we're all putting our ones in the air after WrestleMania.
And
Um,
and to be fair, Sami Zayn wasn't portrayed as a main event level threat at that
no,
time.
and the other thing I was going to say is, was Sammy's issue? Was it with Roman or was it with the Usos? I mean,
Because they
I mean,
built the
he
Jay and
almost
Sammy
yeah,
dynamic a
the
lot
Jay and
longer than
Sammy
the
dynamic
Roman
kind of
thing.
was a much bigger part of that, for that story for a lot of those episodes.
Mhm.
It really was the Jay and Sammy dynamic. So, you know, um, I didn't have a problem with the way it was done, and I love the fact that you brought Kevin Owens back into it because KO had a long history with Roman and the Bloodline, going back to the beginning of the reign for Roman, where he had two matches against Kevin Owens, and each time the Bloodline played a part in it.
I think
You
three
know,
even.
yeah, and plus he's got the history with Sammy. Going back to
It
Ring of
was a
Honor.
neatly tied story.
Yeah, I mean, listen. I actually think I like this better than doing Sammy Roman in the main event.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
liked it for the simple fact because you have the Sammy and Kevin Owens relationship, that their complicated history. You have Kevin Owens' problems with the bloodline, Sami
Hmm.
Zayn's entire relationship with the bloodline, Jay Uso starting to feel soft for Sammy, and then feeling
Yep.
betrayed by Sammy, and then we're still having this whole bloodline story with Jey Uso play out to this day.
Yeah.
Where Jey Uso is arguably probably the most well-rounded character in WWE at this press moment, just with his story arc alone.
Hmm.
And Jimmy, we all love Jimmy.
I don't know. Is are we going to see at some point? I mean, we could all speculate that someone's turning on Cody. Could it be main event Jay going back to the bloodline, or do you think there's a better shot, or is
No.
there a better shot when the Usos reunite? It's Jimmy leaving the bloodline and coming over to be with his brother. When he and when they hug it out. So
I
you
mean,
know,
there are always going to be options on the table, and
yeah,
that's what we like about wrestling. They have options and
yep,
options that can make sense.
a lot of
And
them. And you
and
still
we're
you
going
still have
to
Solo.
and yeah, let's segue back into the biggest WrestleMania tag match of all
Love it.
time: Rock Roman versus Cody and Seth Rollins. With the night one implication, if Rock and Roman are to win, it is bloodline rules for night two. But if Cody and Seth wins, Cody finally gets his one-on-one match. No interference, no bloodline. etc. Now, Seth, where do you think it's going to go? Are we getting bloodline rules, or do you think we're getting straight up one-on-one?
All right, so let's think about this. If we're going with the straight 1-on-1 match with no bloodline rules, then you could have Cody pin Roman in a tag match and get his victory over Roman in a tag.
Mm-hmm.
You know, only for there to be some kind of there could still be some kind of chicanery. You
Mm-hmm.
know, um, where it could be Seth Rollins interfering or something in that match. The last couple of years, it seems like night one has been the feel good night, and night two has been the night where Roman, leaves is the
Mm-hmm.
victor. So, I don't think you're going to get two feel good nights. So I think if Cody and Seth win night one, I don't see Cody winning night two. But I could listen, just my opinion. I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
there are people right now who are like, shut this guy up. Um, on the other hand, all right. On the other hand, the bloodline rules presents some really good opportunities, to have this full of a lot of chicanery and a lot of involvement from a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, plus, it also leads, I mean, I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know which way they're going to go.
Mm-hmm.
I've been thinking this through in my head for so many weeks now. I'm like, I honestly, for the first time in a long time, I honestly have no idea where they're going with a WrestleMania where, it's not predictable. There are options, and I can't wait to watch because that's really the only way you're going to know.
I will make a prediction right here on the podcast, and we're
Prediction or
recording the we're recording this Sunday, March 24th. So
okay,
just in case people are like, "Oh, he said it in this day." No, I said
right,
it today, this day.
March
So
24th.
I do think Roman's gonna hit a spear on The Rock in a
Okay,
tag match. But will that cost him the victory in the tag match? I don't think so. I think there will be just one glaring mess up with the bloodline to show that there's
crack.
cohesiveness, but there's not that family bond that they keep saying and keep
Okay,
saying on online on TV. With Cody and
okay.
Seth, they've been really hammering home Seth Rollins' hatred towards Cody, at least the bloodline portion of
Mm-hmm.
it, where they're like, look, it's like, look, if Seth could do that to me, what can he do to you? But the thing
Correct.
is, it's like usually when they do the over the head hammer thing, that's usually a sign that they're not doing that.
Correct.
So I'm not sure if Seth Rollins would turn on Cody or would cost Cody or that would lead. Like you can have him like Seth Rollins turn on Cody night two,
Mm-hmm.
because I wouldn't make sense to turn on him night one
No,
since he has a world title match
correct.
against Drew.
I do
So it's
think
it's
this.
a lot of interesting options.
Yeah. I mean, you could have. Listen, Seth can get hurt in this match.
Hmm.
You know, lose his championship in night two and be angry and come back to try to get involved with the people who injured him,
Hmm.
and it could backfire.
Right.
So I mean, listen, there are a lot of different ways they can go.
Hmm.
You know I think you know I do think you're going to be seeing Seth Rollins involved in that main event night two, just because he's been involved in the story the whole time. So how can he not be?
A
And I
lot of
do
people have been.
listen.
Mhm.
I was gonna say I love the fact just the tie-ins of you know here we are in the 10th anniversary of the Shield, and we have the two reigning Shield guys, and they're tied into the story as with this too. It's not just the bloodline,
Mhm.
you know. Um,
Yeah, that's what
tell you,
makes this tag match like
yeah,
the what we're saying the KO, Sammy, and Usos match so interesting because you have the Rock's relationship with Roman, Rock's feud with Cody, Cody's feud with Rock, Cody's goal of taking down Roman,
yeah.
his beef with Seth, Roman's beef with Cody. And to be honest with you, Seth, I think Roman's been the weakest part of the build so far.
That's okay. Did you hear? I mean, I I don't think he's been focused on as much. I don't think he's been the weak link of the build, but I just don't think he's been focused on. I think they're focusing more on the Rock and Cody,
Hmm. Which I
which
agreed
kind of
to, yeah.
which makes me wonder. We'll be seeing Cody and The Rock at SummerSlam,
Mhm.
which is why I've already got my hotel room booked for Cleveland because
but
that's
with
that's my prediction
but with
that you'll be seeing.
Roman, like the segment we're filming this right after the SmackDown segment face off between Cody and Roman, and for whatever reason, the lines just weren't hidden. Roman's just been calling Cody Rhodes an idiot, a fool, a goof, and
Did
like
you
those all mean the same thing.
did you happen to see this week's episode of Pat McAfee?
I have, yes.
I mean, dude, it was basically the same thing, just on the Pat McAfee show. He basically said, "This is what I'm going to say tonight."
Yeah, which is
And he did, and he
yeah,
did.
yeah,
Um,
don't make him.
listen, Cody Rhodes is a liar. He keeps saying he's going to win, and he hasn't won yet. You know, he's promised you he was going to beat me last year. He didn't beat me. He's a liar. How stupid are you, Cody? You really going to trust Seth Rollins? I think you're an idiot.
Well, I think that's
I mean,
like the Roman Reigns character is based in insecurity, right? Because he's
Mhm.
calling Seth Rollins little brother, but who's getting little brother to The Rock? You know what I
Right.
mean? So it's just
He's-
like, again, the tribal chief character is more about projection and insecurities than anything else like that. But that's what makes the tribal chief so good.
and the final boss did acknowledge the tribal chief.
Mhm.
So, you got to wonder, will Triple H end up involved in this somehow too? I mean, we haven't seen Triple H on TV
Mhm.
since the night after the press conference
Right.
in
Yes.
Vegas. We haven't seen him since he basically said, that this is I have the final say. This is going to be the main event. It doesn't matter what other people think. And next thing if you listen, it's got to be, it, there's got to be something. We haven't seen him on TV. I wonder if, I'm not saying he runs down and gets involved, and we all know he can't really get involved,
Mhm.
but will he play a part in this? I got to think there's got to be something else. I mean, we saw him that night after the press conference. He's saying he's the man in charge, and now The Rock's been coming out ever since then saying he's the final boss. So, I mean, at some point there's going to be some kind of face to face with the two of them, whether it's before WrestleMania or after WrestleMania. So,
Well, I'm excited all the same. And
mhm.
Mr. Seth, final question. Out of all the tag team matches that we've discussed here today, of course, Roman, Rock, and Cody Seth notwithstanding, because that hasn't happened yet, what would you consider your favorite or favorites?
Of all the ones we've spoken about,
Mm-hmm.
it's a hard one. I mean, the TLC, with the Edge, Christian, the Dudleys, and the Hardys as our only three-way match that we really had. We didn't talk about any of the three ways. Um, the Ronda Rousey mixed tag with Kurt Angle against Triple H and Stephanie. The dumpster match was a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Evolution versus Rock in the Sock, the main event from the first WrestleMania. I mean, I don't know. I mean, honestly, I might have I might just go down the middle on this one. Just say, I'm going to go with the first WrestleMania main event. It's got
Mm.
my boy Hulk Hogan and Mr. T. Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff. It's got all my favorites in it. It kicked off WrestleMania, and again, we're not here if that hadn't been successful. So, how about you, Rich?
Out of all the ones that we talked about, and there were a lot, we
Yeah.
had everything from Hardy Boys returning, we had
Ooh,
the triangle.
we didn't talk about the Hardy Boys return. Hold on a second.
Well,
We
let's talk
forgot.
about them right now.
We talked about the three ways, but we didn't talk about the Newsday coming out and saying this match, is now a fatal four-way match. I wonder who could be involved. I mean, you remember, when that match happened, we were working somewhere else at the time, and I mean, we loved that. Tell me we weren't talking about that match for days after that. We're like,
Well,
dude,
also
nobody saw the Hardys.
the other
Oh,
funny thing is just like I remember us talking like I think the like literally the night or two before they announced it as a ladder match, and both of us are
yes,
like, why is it a ladder match? Like none of these teams
right?
are known for being in ladder match because it was Enzo Cass, the Bar, and the Good Brothers.
Yes, none of
You
them are
know,
ladder match guys.
yeah. So That was
You
pretty
know,
interesting. But
the only
even
the
that,
only, the only reason the only reason they used the ladder because didn't they have like there was like a backstage segment or
yeah,
something
with a ladder was involved. Yeah, that was the
and
only
they as a
reason.
weapon. Yeah.
Yeah.
So because someone hit, because Sheamus and Cesaro used the ladder as a weapon, now all of a sudden we're going to put the titles on the line in a ladder match.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, we thought it was a little strange.
Yeah. But I would have to go with TLC 2 as
Okay.
well. I also like the Usos, KO, and Sammy, but I think somebody recorded and they were like, I think like something like 26 super kicks that were thrown in the entire match. And that's a lot. It's
Yeah,
a lot of super
a lot of
kicks,
kicking,
a
a
lot
lot
of
of
kicking
kicking.
involved. But
We're
anyway,
probably going to see
Mister,
a lot of kicking. Hey, listen, we're going to see Jimmy versus Jay. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of kicking in that one too. So we might go over 26.
I'm sure there will be. I'll keep my stopwatch on me. But Mr. Seth, as somebody who's going to night one of
Mm-hmm.
WrestleMania, on a scale from 1 to 10, how excited are you for that main event of night one?
10, dude. I never, when I first looked at the schedule for this, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to night one, and unfortunately, night two, I'm not going to be there in person. I'll have to watch that one at home. Even when we were doing the debate, and I was like, I'm not going to get to see Roman versus The Rock.
Mhm.
Then I was like, well, I'm not even going to get to see The Rock. The fact that now night one, I'm seeing Roman, I'm seeing The Rock, and I'm seeing Cody. All in action in in the same match, and Seth. You know, three of those four guys I figured would not even be in action for night one.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I'm right now. That match is where my excitement is totally on that one
Yeah.
because I haven't seen The Rock in person in a long time.
What
Yeah,
better time than WrestleMania 40, where it all begins again? Mr. Seth, thank you for being my co host as per usual and rounding out WrestleMonthia here on
thanks for
Wrestling
having me in the main
Retold and
event.
Relived. Now, is there anything else you want to say concerning this year's WrestleMania?
No, listen, I think we'll definitely have a debriefing when it's over though, and
I'm sure we will.
yeah, there might and again, I'm going to go on a prediction, and I'm going to predict that Roman is walking out with the championship.
Ooh, okay. As time goes closer, I start thinking and thinking, that could very possibly be the direction.
I said it when we were doing our debate. I'm going to keep saying it. Cody's time will be later on this year. I don't think Cody's walking out as champion at WrestleMania. I do think he'll be champion before the end of the calendar year, but I think I still stand by my prediction that Roman walks out still head of the table, tribal chief, and undisputed WWE Universal Champion.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining us of Wrestling Retold and Relive with Richie Mars. I, of course, am Richie Mars. That is Mr. Seth over there. And you can follow us at Retold Richie Mars on the TikTok and the Instagram at Retold Richie on Twitter or X, whatever you want to say. TTFN, Tata for now. Enjoy WrestleMania, and I will see you next time.